My microphone is totally in the way. Oh, what's up, cats? How's it going? Welcome to my Sunday stream here. Excited to be here. Totally upgraded my setup now, so you can get a little bit of a better view and hopefully sound when it comes to these streams. So excited to be here, as always. The theme today is chromatic cells. I think as I let people file in here, I'm just going to keep shedding my chromatic cells. I like to treat this kind of like a come shed with me kind of vibe. And I'll just be talking about, you know, what I'm practicing, how I internalize this information. But now in 4K. How about that? Yeah, you know, for me, when I'm practicing certain concepts with melodic cell, like whether it's chromatic cells, melodic cells, whatever, I really like to just tell myself mentally I'm going to play these cells, right? I kind of take some of a, I don't know, more of a broad improvising approach when I'm playing a tune, right? I love to play chromatic cell patterns, you know, around my horn, you know, as a pattern, as we're going to talk about a little bit in this video. But like also thinking about them from an improviser's perspective, like how can I play more melodic cells on or chromatic cells on Aerogen just by telling myself to do it, right? So, you know, I have these in my head. Right? Let me fix the focus on here a little bit. There we go. So like for me, I'm just thinking about, you know, melodic cells being in my solo, right? So I'll just tell myself, maybe even look at a PDF like we have here from a resource that we have at Jazz Lesson Videos. 64 melodic cell exercise is like I have that up on my screen, but I'm still improvising with Aerogen, right? I do have to play. Do I have to pay to get access to this PDF? Yeah, so good. Thank you for bringing that up. And thank you for being in the chat, by the way. I got an eye on it at all times. So if you have any questions during this session, let me know. Yes, so these PDF books are all available on jazzlessonvideos.com. There's a link in the description below, or there should be. And if you use code RD5, you get $5 off, but you do have to pay for the PDFs. Try again. So I really love just improvising in this way. Like I'm improvising with vocabulary in my head. Not set vocabulary, but a theme, right? Themed practicing, themed improvising to me is a great way of building vocabulary in a natural way, right? We're not taking something and doing it the exact same way every single time necessarily. We're improvising with it. We're moving it around our instrument. We're moving it around the tune, right? Just by practicing a couple times in a row, just playing that, maybe, the first 10 minutes of your practicing, 10 minutes of just that. Right? Maybe play it in circle of fourths. That kind of vibe, up and down. And then just tell yourself, okay, now I'm going to play it. See if I can hear this. So talking a little bit more in detail as to exactly what I've practiced in order to be as free as possible with these concepts, right? So I'm thinking to myself, like, how can I use information that not necessarily is, it's melodic, but it's not like a melody, right? Like a chromatic cell is not a melody. It's not like a transcribed piece of information that you could like sing and quote, right? It's more of a building block, or like I like to call them like Lego pieces in a way. You ever play with Legos when you were a kid, right? It's like a musical Lego piece. They're connector phrases. They're supposed to help us connect from one thing to the other, right? So I like to think about them that way and have the thought of how can I take an idea that I consider melodic and then transition that with a melodic cell to then play another idea. So I have like these phrases I've practiced. That would I consider a melodic cell or a chromatic cell. That's one. Or like, and then, so that's like always resolving to C. And Aragon does that a lot, right? So I'm thinking about how can I use those pieces to connect, like, so I have, that's like a thing that I transcribe. Now I'm thinking, how can I play a melodic cell to get me back to C minor, because I'm playing Aragon, right? So, so sometimes I practice them in ways where they're supposed to connect two ideas to land me somewhere. Got something in the chat. Would you take these sequences? Hold on one second. Wait. Would you take these sequences and just try to use them in the moment, or write out the phrases? Good question. I hate to say this and be like, the politically correct answer is both, right? So I would absolutely be cool with writing them out and absolutely be cool with just playing them in the moment. Me personally, I am not organized. I don't have a brain that works with writing them out and then retaining the information. For me, my brain works the best when it knows the information, but it doesn't know, it's not organized in like where I put it every single time. Then use those phrases over the playing. So I think I understand what you're saying. And for me, it's a broader way of thinking about it. So I practice these melodic cells, and I'll practice phrases that I like to connect with them, but I don't want to write them down, because then if I practice them too much, or I write them down like and have them organized like that, I feel like I'm always going to play the same ones over and over again. And I'd rather play the concept a lot, but not repeat myself if I don't have to, right? And this kind of goes into the thing of like, I like to think about myself as two different kinds of musicians. Like when I'm practicing, I'm a saxophone player and I'm an improviser. And so as a saxophone player, I absolutely am doing what you're talking about, like practicing phrases like every time that works over progressions. Not a ton, but I have to do it a little bit to connect to the cells and, connect my phrases. But then when I'm practicing improvising, which is kind of what I'm talking about right now, it's more of a broad, like open, like thinking about chromatic cells, but not trying to play the same ideas that I've practiced. I hope that makes sense. Let me know if you have another question about that, because we could go down that hole for sure a little bit more in depth and in detailed. I need to get my computer charger. Let me figure out where that is, because my computer is about to die. But yeah, that's kind of the vibe. I'll be right back. Let me get my computer charger. Okay. I got 900 wires around here. I'm in the process of moving too, so like a lot of things are just about. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense, Ethan. It's like a broad way of thinking about it. A broad way. Yeah, so like again, it's a really like it's a two-step process for me. I have to learn on my horn, play it, in patterns like I was talking about a little bit earlier, like playing it over and over and over again, like for 10 minutes, just getting the pattern in my fingers, and then, just trying it out over a tune in time and out of time. And I think there is a process in the middle of that where it's like I'll try and play like those melodic phrases, right? Like that Charlie Parker one that I transcribed. And then how can I connect something else with a melodic cell? So that way I'm like almost stream of consciousness playing ideas, but connecting them with cells, right? Thinking about how a cell could connect an idea. I do, because I'm smooth brain. So it's good to know that I can be more open with this. I do it with a 4-bar loops on iRo Pro. Yeah, absolutely. Same here. Like, yeah, I think about it as like a way of improvising with vocabulary. That's the way that I like to think about it, right? And it can be like you can make your exercises as structured or as non-structured as you like. Sometimes I have to, like, the only way I'm going to be productive in my practice session is if I absolutely improvise. Like, I just need to improvise, right? That's like in my brain. And I'll have a really productive practice session if I tell myself, okay, I'm going to improvise and I'm going to on purpose, like, just think about a concept, but just improvise. Like, there's no, we have a membership program here called Jazz Gym, and it's great, and I coach it almost every day. And we have a block called a jam block, where you're supposed to just improvise. And sometimes I'll give like themed improvising concepts, like, okay, guys, we're working on melodic chromaticism this week, so let's try and play all the things you are in this jam block, but I want you to think about playing melodic cells, right? Just see what happens. And sometimes you'll be shocked, like you'll make up your own lines without even doing it, because you're forcing yourself to improvise with a concept. So I think that's really important to do in your session. We got some, Drew is in the chat. What's up, Drew? Hey, Ryan, I've been transcribing you for a few years now. Thank you. I'm starting to work on transcribing the changes of tunes. However, this is very difficult for me. Any tips, and do you think it is worth it? Yeah. Okay. So good question. Ear training is probably the number one thing that I still struggle with, but I struggled with a lot when I was younger, in undergrad and in grad school. And yeah, so transcribing changes and chords is super important, and I didn't think it was very important when I first started improvising and first started learning this music. I didn't think it was like all I wanted to do was, that's all I cared about. I just wanted to shred, and I didn't care about anything else. And one of my teachers, besides Chad, was the saxophone professor at University of Central Florida. His name's Jeff Rupert, and I remember he told me that if I start to understand exactly what I'm playing on the chords that I can associate those things that I'm playing with, it's going to change my playing. And I didn't believe him at first. I really didn't. And I failed my first 2 ear training courses at UCF. Completely failed them. Had to retake the class or retake the test, like twice, I think. And yeah, because I couldn't tell you the difference between a dominant 7 and a minor 7 chord, But what I did have was relative pitch, because I was transcribing. So I could tell you saxophone notes, but I couldn't tell you the chords. And I'm telling you all this to say, when I started shedding transcribing tunes, like the chord changes and the melodies without a lead sheet, it completely helped me get to a better understanding of this music in general. Like, association is a huge thing for me and how my brain works, Like, when I was playing in wedding bands a lot in grad school, man, like, there's no charts on a lot of these tunes, and I would take solos on them, and it was cool. But, you know, I'd have to like hear the changes on the spot and like just be able to get them. And I couldn't associate those changes with jazz changes because my ears were still really, really weak, even in grad school. And the more I did it, the easier it got to be able to, oh man, I Will Survive is like all the things you are. It's got the same movements, right? So you can start associating those things. There's only so many progressions and chords, right? And a lot of progressions and chords are very similar in the scales that you play on top of them. So this all to say, the more that you do transcribe tunes and chords like by ear and associate those sounds with things that you're playing on your horn, you'll be able to play any tune just by hearing it once, which is cool. I go to jam sessions all the time, and I'll ask to play on a tune that I'm not super familiar with, like just take a chorus, you know, just as an exercise. And I'm not trying to sound killing. I'm not trying to sound incredible. You know, I'm just trying to learn, trying to get better, right? And so all that to say, absolutely, it is worth it. And I think the number one thing that we can work on as musicians is ear training, association of what we're hearing, and then being able to apply it to our instruments. That's absolutely the number one thing. And it kind of goes. There is a Michael Brecker recording I wanted to show you guys. Yeah, here we go. Check this out. Talking about melodic cells. So speaking of like things for transcribing and ear training, I remember when I first heard this, and I heard this section. Right here. I was like, whoa, what is that? I was like, is that different modes of major chord? Like, what is that? It's a chromatic cell phrase that he's just playing on top of rhythm changes. And rhythm changes is cool. It's a tune that is all in pretty much the same key, right? Just different progressions going back and forth to our one chord. And like he's just treating it as one big B flat major chord. And they're playing it so fast to where it just sounds like that, right? And then he's playing chromatic cells in and around that one chord, right? It's killing. I remember I heard this change my life. Let's listen to it again. Oh, also, at the beginning of his chorus, he plays rhythm changes up a half step in D flat. That's all phrases in concert B, or his D flat. So, you know, speaking of practicing and melodic cells and stuff, I would listen to this probably like, you know, I probably have listened to this hundreds of times by now, but like when I first was hearing it, I listened to it over and over and over and over again, probably like 20 times in a row. And then I would pick up my horn and I'd play rhythm changes for like an hour, and I'd just try and do it. No special process. Like just, I would maybe like try and transcribe a little bit of it, like just by ear, you know, and then I would just try it, just go and do it. Like I would just play rhythm changes. I remember I'd play rhythm changes for like an hour straight, just trying to play like Michael Brecker, you know? And maybe not always the most productive thing, but it is important to practice, I think, improvising with a theme, you know? And to me, it got me so obsessed with practicing in general. Like, it got me so obsessed with just being able to play more. You know what I mean? Like, just practicing like crazy. And in fact, I'll try and do this right now. So. Right, so he's playing. Let me get that exact line here. Right? I'm not looking for perfection right now, but I'm going to play this now over Aerogen, right? Just force those lines. Trying to force vocabulary, you know. The process of this, I think, is natural for everybody, right? It should be natural, you know. Just like when we're learning language from speakers, right? Like when I'm learning language from listening to somebody. Like if I was taking Spanish lessons or anything like that, you know. I think it's one thing to learn the words from the book and from like an app or whatever, like Duolingo. But the most natural speakers, I think, obviously learn it from just hearing it and being able to implement it in conversation. And that's kind of what I'm practicing right now, is I'm taking a phrase that I like and have learned and forcing it on top of something naturally, if that makes sense. Forcing something naturally, kind of a funny thing. Another great solo I like to check out for these chromatic cells is Joe Henderson on this Mel Lewis tune. Oh yeah, here we go. And it's transcribed. Specifically that first part. Oh. starting on A7. Ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da. That's a killing phrase. Right? So that's one that I would take and repeat a couple times. And again, try and force it on a tune I'm working on. Origin. Another classic Joe Henderson phrase. Sort of melodic cell, chromatic cell, not really. Basically the whole tone scale. That straight chromatic scale right there. Hold on. Right? Like E, D up to B flat there. Super chromatic. He's just playing chromatically from D and up to B. And then E flat up to B, C, and then E up to C sharp. You know, do that a lot. So that's another phrase that I would force on top of origin, just as a practice technique. So I'm just going to take, just to see how many places I can put it. goes to the left side and YouTube are centered. Is it possible for you to adjust? Uh-oh. Let me see. You know what? It might be... Thank you for letting me know that. It might be because of my interface. Let me look at my OBS settings here. Oh, here we go. This is audio capture. Let me look here 1 second. Active. Oh, maybe if I make it mono. Let me know. Oh, nope. This better? Let me know if that makes it any better. Thank you for letting me know. I'll work on that if for some reason it doesn't do anything. Yeah. I think it's because of my interface. All right. Well, I'll wait to see. Bingo. Perfect. All right. Oops. Good. Awesome. Yay. How would you do it with transcriptions with more nebulous vocab? Kind of like this Henderson. Yeah, so, man, I'll give the long answer because we're on stream and we have time. So when transcribing like stuff that works over a ton of stuff, like for example, there's this Gary Thomas transcription I want to work on, but I don't know where to start. Oh, okay. So for these transcriptions, like, you know, the long weird changes, even though I think this is kind of a bluesy vibe. It's cool to just do sections of it. I mean, I've probably only done like 10 or 15 full solos in my life, and I've done thousands of pieces of vocabulary. You know what I mean? Like just little snippets. 2-bar snippets, 1-bar snippets, 8-bar snippets, you know what I mean? Like little things like that. You don't have to learn a whole solo to learn vocabulary. So with these Joe Henderson things, just like when I'm practicing, like just that little, you know, that's like a 2-bar concept. For me, that's enough vocabulary to squeeze out a whole etude worth of information. You know, I can play it backwards, I can play it forwards, I can play it different sequences, right? You can get a ton of information just out of one little piece of vocabulary, right? And I think I said this on the last stream that I did last week, but I got to go to the Michael Brecker archives a couple months ago in New Jersey and at William Patterson University. Man, killing stuff. And Brecker would write down these like little pieces of vocabulary. He had some full solos, but just like little snippets. And then sometimes they were in different keys and whatnot. And then he would say where he got it from and what it is, and then he would practice it that way. And I love to do that too. I kind of, you know, got that from other teachers and stuff. They would tell me to just do little pieces of information and put it into a couple different keys and then use it. You know, it doesn't need to be a full solo. Got another thing. Hi, Ryan. Love your work. Quick question. Thank you, by the way. Do you know any guitarists that use melodic cells the way horn players use them? This cat knows in the chat. Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, like horn players do. Shoot. I think we all use melodic cells in similar ways as improvisers. Joe Pass definitely uses melodic cells and chromatic cells. Any influenced bebop improviser is going to use cells in some way. You know, some more chromatic than others. I would say there's a great guitar player. His name, Matheny, obviously. Mick Gudrick, who did some stuff with Brecker and stuff with Jerry Bergonzi. Definitely plays melodic cells. I've heard of them in his solos before. Oh man, there's a killing Elvin Jones record with this guitar player named Roland Prince. Yes, look at all my things. What is the record called? Not Mr. Jones. It's at the West End. Oh man, what is the? I'm gonna kick myself when I find out the name of this record. I have it saved. Yeah, here we go. Mr. Thunder. That's what it's called. Yeah, this record. They play a ton of amazing tunes. Steve Grossman's also on it. And yeah, Roland Prince takes some great solos on modal tunes. Yeah. 3-card. They have this written wrong. This is 3-card Molly. Grossman solo's killing. I learned it. Alvin takes a solo on this one. Oh, the guitar player doesn't take a solo on this one. Hold on. That's New Moon. This one is... Yeah. Yeah, here we go. This is a killing record. It's not exactly what I was thinking, though. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, I think this is it. The guitar player on this recording, I can't remember his name, but plays a ton. Yeah, here we go. A lot of pentatonic. In there. Adam Rogers. Yeah, that's a killing recording. Adam Rogers with Brecker on YouTube, absolutely, yes. I'm not as familiar with Adam Rogers as I am with some of these other guitar players, but I'll definitely check that out. Is there a conceptual difference between chromatic cells and enclosures? Do you see them as the same thing and apply them differently? Great question. So the term melodic cells, chromatic cells, enclosures, approach tones, they can all be kind of categorized in what we call melodic chromaticism, right? So things that are in and out of the tonality, but all have what we call target tones, right? And a target tone is usually a chord tone, right? So in the examples that we were giving at the beginning here, like this is a chromatic cell, but could also be kind of an approach tone exercise because to me, or an enclosure phrase. Let me explain. So to me, this could be a 4-note cell that targets D flat. This is where we're resolving, right? So C, B flat, C, D flat. That's a resolving tone, right? Then it could also be an approach tone exercise because we're approaching D flat from C. But it could also be an enclosure because we enclose C, B flat, C, right? So sort of enclosing C, not really, right? I don't know. Cells and chromatic cells to me aren't enclosures because we're not enclosing something. We're approaching something, so they could be approach tones. But a cell is like a chromatic cell specifically is a gathering of chromatic notes that eventually target something. Usually the first and the last note are the same note, and we're not going like one up, one down, target tone, right? An enclosure would be that's an enclosure. An approach tone. So approach tones and enclosures are kind of in the same category. Usually if you have an enclosure, you also have an approach tone, right? A chromatic cell or melodic cell would be like, that'd be like a melodic cell in C minor, C, E flat, D, C. I would consider a melodic cell being more diatonic to a key center, and a chromatic cell not really having a key center, but having a target tone, it's still involved. That'd be a more chromatic cell. Melodic cell, all in the same key center of C minor. Right? And then chromatic version, add a D flat in there. So they're all in the same family, and when you start practicing them individually, they start to kind of meld into one another the more that you have more of them in your playing. Because like we also have these things called compound cells, and compound cells are where we take two together. So you could take a melodic cell and a chromatic cell. That would be more of a chromatic cell. That's a compound cell, two of them put together. That's a melodic cell, and then maybe I'll make one more chromatic. Melodic cell into a chromatic cell. Put them together. A compound melodic cell, right? You could put two chromatic cells together. Doesn't really have a key center necessarily, but targets a note, right? So all of this to say, you practice them in individual ways, and we have resources that have them all individually written out for you in all 12 keys, which is awesome. We even have a combo package on the website. Here, let me show you. This is exactly what I used when I was learning this. But what's cool, jazz. But what was cool is I was learning them from Chad just writing the PDFs out for me in my lessons before Jazz Lesson Videos was a company. But yeah, we have this really great package. Here we go. Yeah, approach tone and enclosure combo package. And it has 15 approach note and enclosure exercises for jazz musicians, approach tone exercises, melodic chromaticism workout, and 20 etudes, putting them all together. So it's kind of like a how to practice this in 4 books. And honestly, these 4 books is probably worth like 15 lessons with a pro that would teach you how to do this stuff. They're all written by Chad, and they're fantastic. And I practiced out of every one of these books before they were even books, back when he was just sending me etudes and stuff. So check that out. And you can use the code RD5 for $5 off if you're interested. So that's really great. Also, speaking of practicing more of these together, these are modern bebop phrases. This is a book I wrote. And basically, it's all these phrases with different kinds of concepts. We have these compound chromatic cells. Check out this line. So I took a compound cell, right, and I played that chromatically, and then I added it to more of a traditional way of getting back home to a scale, right? So this one kind of teaches how how to use that. What sax stand is this? I don't know. I got this from my dad. It's like a stand-up stand. So it's like really tall. And it allows me to have my saxophone more at like arm's length. Plus, it looks really cool in videos. It looks like my saxophone's kind of like floating. Are chromatic cells always 4-note structures, or can they be any note? Yeah, man, you can have 5, 3, 7, 9, 13 cells. One of my favorite ones is... That's an 8-note cell. There's a 7 or a 5-note one that I was doing. Yeah, that's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Right? So that's like more of a 5-note cell. And then you add those 3 notes after that. Yeah, it's kind of like 4 and 4, but the enclosure part is 5. Ba da 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's a 5-note. But yeah, there's other. Oh, when you add triplets, you can do groups of 6. Like what was the? Yeah. Ah. Right? Making up some different 3-note, 5-note, 7-note groups. I know most of them in 4 and 8 because that's the most symmetrical, but you can absolutely shed them in other groupings. Is the truth behind this stuff that you apply it to a tune before it becomes part of your playing rather than shedding it for a long time in isolation? Great question. For me, I have to practice applying it, right? So I have to practice being able to play it over a tune, like I did at the beginning of this video. If you weren't here, it's okay, but maybe you can watch back the stream. But I was playing it over Aerogen, like purposely playing some of these cells, right? So I absolutely practice applying it to tunes before I just have it in my playing and go. For me, it sounds more organic when I can like practice improvising with it when I go on stage, because then it really feels like a piece of my vocabulary, and it's less like I'm just playing a pattern that I learned. For me, that's the process. And I learned that process in grad school. It took me a while to kind of get to that, but I had to take away my saxophone playing technique stuff and really practice improvising and making more of a melody with things, right? Because if you're practicing improvising, it takes in more of like the broader approach. Like the, yeah, I don't know, like the Jerry Bergonzi would tell me like really big things to think about, like when I was improvising. Like sometimes we'd even think about like earth, like like the elements, earth, water, fire, air, and so we would talk about those and just play a solo that represents air, right? And so I would also apply those to when I was working on concepts like melodic cells or like pentatonics, whatever. And I would say, okay, I'm just going to play chromatic cells right now, but I'm not going to play patterns. I'm not going to play a set line. I'm just going to play melodic cells, for like maybe like 15 minutes. I'm going to play Aerogen for 15 minutes, and I'm just going to play melodic cells or chromatic cells, right? And have a themed etude to it, but it's not necessarily like I'm planning to play a ba-ba-do-ba-da-ba-do-ba-da. I'm really trying to be organic with it while having it still in my mind that I'm going to play it. Does that make sense? So for me, it works better if I do it and apply it over the tune, for sure. So, yeah, great question. I love this. I love this kind of practicing, and it usually gets me to practice more when I'm thinking about making something work on top of changes or making something work in a solo. Right? I'm really focused on improvising with it and making a melody out of it. Like, how can I make melodic cells and chromatic cells sound like a melody, right? Sound like something that someone would want to sing or transcribe later, and also it has that shredding capability. You know what I mean? Like if you put a bunch of cells together, you know, like. I'm just like superimposing cells all over the place. So, you know, the more that you play them and the more that you practice them on your instrument, the more it's easy to just stack them on top of each other, and then they kind of become their own piece of vocabulary at that point. But again, you know, it comes from like I didn't transcribe that line. I didn't write that line out. I didn't like predetermine it. That's just because I've practiced cells all over my horn. I can just play it. You know what I mean? And then there's those cells kind of become like a piece of my vocabulary. Like that line is now in my vocabulary. I can pull it out, you know? But it's not because I practice it that way by like writing it out predetermined. It's just because I practice cells, and that's me improvising with the cells. So hopefully that makes sense. But thank you all for being here. This is awesome. I love doing this stream. I'm trying to do it every Sunday night at like around between 5 and 7 Eastern time. So if you guys are around and want to come hang, let me know. Let me know in the comments what you want me to talk about next. I'd like to do them a little bit themed, you know, and all the concepts and things that we talked about. These etude books and chromatic cell things are all available on jazzlessonvideos.com. You can click the link in the description and use my code RD5 to get $5 off, because everybody wants to save money. Save yourself some money when you're practicing. Great answer. Thanks. Sometimes, or something I've really been struggling with, trying to hear the things before them. So yeah, absolutely. So that they occur to me on stage. Yeah. Just got to practice them like you're playing on stage. Themed improvisational etudes are great. And when I say etudes, I just mean like playing choruses, but you don't need to write them down like they're etudes. Like just themed improvisation. That's what you got to practice. I think that'll help a lot. Yeah, thanks for being here. Appreciate you, cats. And I'll see you guys next week. Happy practicing. And yeah, keep in touch.